Welcome back to the Chasing Happiness podcast, an honest podcast about finding happiness, what it really means, and the process of getting there. My name is Crystal, and today we're actually talking about moving. So most of you know, if you've been following on social media or listening to this podcast, I am moving from Southern Ontario to Nova Scotia, a place I have never been before. So I am recording this at the end of September. I am moving just after Canadian Thanksgiving, which is the middle of October. So we are less than 30 days away from the move. And I've gotten a lot of questions about why I'm moving, about how I made the decision to go where I'm going. And for those of you who are listening who haven't been a part of the podcast from the very beginning, I'm going to give you a little bit of a backstory for those that don't know me personally. But I know a lot of you have been listening since the beginning because I share my personal journey and my personal story as well. And I'm still going to do that from time to time. That's still going to be a part of this amazing podcast. So today is one of those episodes. Now, about 4 years ago, the last couple of years because of COVID have all kind of melted together. So back in 2016, we're in 2021 right now. So yeah, like 5 years ago, I moved from Southern Ontario out to Edmonton. An opportunity had come up. I was unhappy in the job that I was in. I was completely lost and confused about what to do with my life. And so this opportunity came up and I sold almost everything that I owned and I moved across the country. It was scary. I will 100% agree that there were parts of it where I thought to myself, am I making the right decision? But ultimately, it was a magical adventure. I was out in Edmonton for a couple of years. I met some amazing and fantastic people. And for those of you who are listening to the podcast because you met me out in Edmonton, I love you and I miss you. I still talk to a number of people from out there on a fairly regular basis, and I hope to get back there to visit soon because it really is a wonderful place with some great people. But I ultimately came home a couple of years into that journey, mostly because I am not a winter baby. As you guys know, if you listen to the podcast, I do not do cold weather well. Winters in Edmonton are hard. The snow is different in Edmonton because it's so far north compared to Southern Ontario. There's not a lot of humidity, so it's a very light kind of snow. It's definitely not packing snow. And you can blow most of it away for the most part with like a leaf blower, which was a weird thing to see when I first went out there. But winters were just too cold. Like minus 40 is a normal minus 40 degrees Celsius for all my American friends is a normal temperature for winter out there. And I do not do cold well. So leaving Edmonton was mostly a winter thing. I love summers out there because the sun stays up for so long because it's so far north. But I was not a winter baby. So I came back to Southern Ontario and I've been home for a handful of years now. And because of COVID and everything that's going on with the housing market here, the house that I am renting, the landlords decided they wanted to sell. And it kind of seemed like the perfect opportunity to make a change, make a really big change in my life again. There's a lot of other things that are changing in my life right now. I'm making some changes to the business with Chasing Happiness. As you guys know, because you listen to the podcast, I've been making some changes to the podcast and how the podcast operates. So making a change in my personal life, in the place where I live, just sort of kind of came naturally. And because I've moved across the country before, I have no fear about it whatsoever. And I know a lot of you have asked about that. So let's address that first. Fear really, for most of us, in my experience, comes from a place of us being concerned about what's going to happen and whether or not we can actually handle whatever it happens to be. There's this huge fear of the unknown, right? What if something happens and I don't know what to do? The amazing thing about us as human beings is we figure it out. Whatever it is, we figure it out somehow. And sometimes it's not pretty. Sometimes, in fact, it's quite messy and chaotic, but we figure it out. So I have no fear about going out there because I know whatever happens, I will figure it out. And if worse comes to worse and I don't like it out there, I can turn around and come home. I've signed a lease, so obviously, I am obligated to stay for a little while, but if I don't like it, I have the ability to make a different choice. And I think that's the biggest lesson that I can give anyone who's asking about why I'm doing this or about how they can make a change in their life too. If you are one of the people who's on the fence about making a change in your life, just know If you make a change and you decide 3 months or 6 months into that change that wasn't the right decision for you, you may not be able to go back to exactly where you were before, but you can make a change again. We are not limited to a certain number of changes in our lifetime. We are not limited to this magic of once you make a decision, once you change something, you're stuck with it forever. You can make different decisions every single day and lead a completely different life every single day if you chose to. That's the magic of being who we are, living in this world that we live in nowadays. So ultimately, I guess this whole podcast is mostly for me just to say, if you're looking to make a change, go ahead and do it. See what happens. It could be magical. We are 30 days approximately away from moving, and I'm excited. I'm starting to get excited. I still, of course, have packing to do. I've had a pretty chaotic summer, so I haven't had a lot of opportunity to do that. So there is going to be a lot of last minute packing, and I'm okay with that. I am making some adjustments in my business life and in my personal life to allow for that. And of course, there's a ton of people I would love to visit before I go, and I'm not going to get to see all of them. And everyone else I will FaceTime with, I will make time for in some way, shape, or form as I can when I can. But I'm excited for the adventure. I'm excited to drive out there and see all the different sites along the way. I have never been to the East Coast here in Canada, so I'm excited to see how life is going to unfold. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of stress involved in moving. You have to pack all your stuff. You have to decide what you're keeping, what you're getting rid of. You have to hope that your stuff gets there if you're not actually taking it yourself, which I'm not. So there is stress involved in the process. But the thing that I found that has been the most important part of all of this is understanding that no matter what happens, I will be able to handle it. If I get out there and I find out my stuff is going to be delayed by a month, it's okay. I've been living out of a suitcase. I will continue to do so. If my stuff goes missing and disappears and I never have it again, that's why I have insurance. I will replace my things. The stuff that's super important that I don't want to have to replace, I'm carrying with me. I'm taking with me in the car so that I am fully responsible for that. Everything else is replaceable. The important part is that I enjoy the journey and try not to let the stress eat away at me. You know, there's a lot of things happening in the next couple of months here in Ontario with people who I love and care about that I'm going to miss out on. And that's heartbreaking because I love them and because I care about them and I want to be there for their special moments and their important things. I also, though, have to live my life and I have to be willing to put myself first sometimes. And it doesn't mean that I don't love them or miss them or want to be there for them. It just means that these decisions about getting to where I'm going are just as important. So I'm not saying that moving is easy, and I'm not saying that it's not stressful and chaotic and a mess sometimes, but it's also this wonderful opportunity to recreate yourself. Get rid of all of the things that you don't need anymore. For those of you who've been listening to this podcast, you know over the last couple of years, I've been focusing on my health and I've been losing weight, not because I've been focused on losing weight, but because I've focused on changing my health habits. And so I have a ton of clothes that don't fit me anymore. And the amazing thing is, this is a great excuse to go through all of that. Only take the things that I love and that bring me joy. Sort of that Marie Kondo, allow it to bring you joy or allow it to move on in your life kind of thing. And it's been wonderful because I've been able to pick up almost everything I own and decide, is this worth keeping? Is this something I have to keep or I want to keep? Or can it have another life with someone else who will value it the way I did? And I've donated a lot of stuff because I think some stuff absolutely is worth selling, but other things people who are in need could benefit from having. And I remember what it's like to not have things, to need someone to be generous in that way. So I'm willing to donate a bunch of what I'm giving up as well in this process. So it's a great excuse, this whole moving thing, to sort of purge and cleanse your life of all the things that no longer serve you. And even though I did that a few years ago when I came back from Edmonton, we're human beings, right? We accumulate things. It just happens naturally. People give you gifts or you purchase things and then ultimately don't use them, or maybe use them a few times but decide you don't need them. We accumulate stuff. Even when we try really hard not to accumulate stuff, we accumulate stuff, and that's okay. The important thing is that at some point, we go through it all again. We reassess. We determine what's worth keeping and what's not. It's also given me a fantastic excuse to think about what's really important to me. And you guys know, if you've listened to this podcast for a while now, I love a whole lot of different things. I love art, and I love culture, and I love food, and I love canning and jarring and cooking and baking. But I also love painting and sketching. I love writing handmade cards. I love doing all of these things. And how do you incorporate all of this stuff that you love doing into your busy and chaotic life? Well, you find a way for the things that are important for you to be able to make them happen. And art and creativity is super important to me. So my new kitchen at my new apartment is giant, with all kinds of cupboard space, which I haven't had for years. So I'm going to be able to can and jar and bake and cook, and it's going to be magical, and I'm super excited about it. So if you're someone that's important to you and you don't have the space where you are right now, ask yourself a couple questions. Can you get the space by making some changes, adding some furniture or storage, or doing something differently? Or do you need to move locations to get what you're looking for? Art and creativity is really important to me. So there is a perfect space in the new apartment for me to be able to set up an easel and paint and sketch and draw. There's a huge balcony where I can grow vegetables, which you guys know I love doing. This new journey is a perfect excuse to set up a space and create a space that I love. If you're living in a space right now and you don't love it, ask yourself what you can do to create that space that you love, the space that brings you joy and comfort and relaxation. You know, my life has changed a lot in the last 6 to 9 months. And it's hard for me to think about who I was a year ago when this pandemic started, because so much of my life has changed and is unfolding, in part because of this move, but also in part because I was ready to move a whole lot of aspects of my life, my personal relationships, my business. If we want and seek out change in one area of our lives, we will inevitably be changing something else in our lives as well. So for all of you listening to this podcast, if you're not entirely happy where you are, sit down and ask yourself a few questions about, do I need to move? Can I change the space I'm in? Can I make small changes over the next few months that will allow me to create what I'm looking to do? That doesn't mean it's not going to be scary, and it doesn't mean at times you're not going to second guess yourself. I have done that in this process. That's a normal part of change because we as humans fear the unknown. Trust yourself enough to know that no matter what happens, you will figure it out. You will reach out for support when you need it, and you will move forward. We all deserve to be happy. We all deserve to create the life of our dreams, and that's going to look different for each and every single one of us. And that's okay. We need to honor that for ourselves and for others. And we need to support people in doing that more often. So we are 30 days out from the move, and there will be some podcast episodes taped along the way, because I'm sure there will be things that happen along the way. But the podcast is changing. The business is changing. I'm changing. And that's the whole point. The story of who you are is always evolving and growing and changing. And that's true for me just as much as it's true for you. So allow your life to grow and change and evolve. This change, this moving to a new province on the other side of the country, essentially, in a different time zone, this is just the next chapter in my story. This is the next evolution of where I need to go to be true to who I am and live my best, authentic, happiest life. So ask yourself what that would mean for you. What's your story? What will bring you joy? Next week, we do have another great interview coming your way. And I'm so grateful to you for listening, because you guys seem to really love these interviews. And I am grateful that I get to sit down and have these amazing conversations with people on a regular basis. I learn so much from these conversations, and I hope you do too. If you're not currently following on Instagram or Facebook, I highly suggest that you do, because I will be sharing all kinds of things from on the road, especially over on Instagram. So I will post the Instagram link in the show notes to this episode, because Instagram is going to be where I post most of the journey of leaving Southern Ontario and heading out to Nova Scotia. I thank you for listening. I hope you have an amazing and fantastic week. I'm sending love and light to all of you. And I do just want to comment that because this episode is going up on September 27th, here in Canada on September 30th is Truth and Reconciliation Day. If you're not sure what that is, I highly recommend that you Google it. This is a day of mourning. This is a day of educating yourself, of getting to know exactly what has been happening here in this country, what has been happening to our Indigenous people, and how we can all take part in creating a better world. A safer world, a more respectful world for everyone around us. Everyone deserves to be happy, healthy, and free. And part of what we do on Truth and Reconciliation Day should be to educate ourselves about the facts that we might not be aware of, and spend our time not just learning, but giving in the best way that we can. Go and look it up if you're not sure what it is. And remember, that's September 30th. I'm sending love to all of you. I hope you have an amazing week, and I hope you love the episode next week. It's a fantastic conversation with Zizi. And for those of you that don't know Zizi, you are going to get to know her, and you will love her, I promise. Have a wonderful week, everyone, and I will chat with you next week. Bye for now.